Hello, in this week's episode of Venture Capital, we discuss perception versus reality when it comes to stock valuations. Also coming up, the UK versus the EU on bankers' bonuses takes an unexpected twist. The third largest economy in the world, Japan, in recession. Plus, cocoa costs, burgers are back, and Tim, he talks post. That's all on the way. But first of all, Apple is now worth more than the entire Russian stock market. Now, one is being boosted by strong product sales, the other plagued by Western sanctions, a weak ruble and falling oil prices. Now, Apple's market capitalization is now at a record high right here of nearly $700 billion. Meanwhile, the capitalization of all Russian stocks is at about $530 billion. But can this really be right? Well, we're going to talk to an expert on exactly that right now, American broker and author Peter Schiff. Hi there, Peter. So when it comes to Apple versus the Russian stock market, this new valuation, is it a fair assessment? What exactly is going on here? Or is it perhaps a perception problem?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily about Apple, more so about the Russian market. And I remember back in the late 1990s making comparisons at that time between various dot-com stocks that didn't even have any earnings exceeding the market caps of entire countries where I was investing. So I do think that in general, you have an excess overvaluation in the United States. And I think the Russian stocks, obviously on a relative basis, and not just the stocks in Russia, but in other countries, particularly in some of the emerging markets, are very, very cheap by comparison. And so you really have, a tale of two extremes. You have the mania of bubbles in some economies, and then you have the mirror image in others.
If you've got the choice of buying Apple or the whole of the Russian stock market, what would you do?
Well, I think I can own the entire market cap of Russia versus just Apple, then obviously I think I would take Russia over one company. But Apple is not our most overvalued company. I mean, Apple is generating a lot of profits. Whether they can sustain that in a highly competitive environment is anybody's guess. But there are a lot of companies that might be better examples of absurdity. You have lots of companies that are probably, have significant value relative to the Russian market cap that have no earnings whatsoever, have never had any earnings, and probably never will.
And what would be an example of that?
Look at Amazon now. I mean, Amazon is losing money, and you've got all these companies, private companies, that haven't even gone public yet, like in Uber, where you've got, $20 billion market cap. So think of all the pie in the sky valuations being assigned to relatively young U.S. startups. Yet you have mature Russian companies with tremendous real fixed assets, plant and equipment, natural resources that are basically being given away while people are paying ridiculous prices for an empty promise of a future that may never materialize.
Peter Schiff, Chairman of Euro Pacific Bank, thank you for your thoughts today. We do appreciate that. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's two-year stimulus program, otherwise known as Abenomics, is under scrutiny. The economy is now officially in recession after a second consecutive quarter of contraction, and a snap election has been called in response to this. Now, Abenomics has meant pumping trillions of yen into a stubbornly stagnant economy plagued by deflation. Well, I'm now joined by David Kuo from Motley Fool. He's in Asia to discuss these problems in more detail. Okay, David, so tell me, Japan in recession, has this Abenomics gone horribly wrong?
Well, Katie, some people might say it has gone wrong, but from my perspective, I don't think it has gone wrong at all. We need to remember that Japan was in a serious mess, and so consequently, Abenomics has only been going on for about 2 years. If you have a look at what's been happening in America, it took 7 years for Americans, for America's quantitative easing to show any kind of result. And only recently has America said it can stop printing money. So I think Japan's only been at this for 2 years. And some people perhaps, are a little rushed. They want something to happen immediately. And I don't think these things do happen immediately, which is probably one of the reasons why Prime Minister Abe is calling an election now. He is saying that I need more time to do this, so give me a mandate, and we need another 4 years to do this.
What does this problem in Japan at the moment, the fact that they are in recession, what does it tell us about the wider global economy and the weakness of it, or the threat the Japanese economy poses to the external global economy?
Okay, right. You know, that is a brilliant question, because what we've seen so far is that America has been prepared to print money, pump money into its economy to get it growing. Europe has not. I mean, Europe has actually been quite reluctant to do that for various political reasons. Now, Japan is taking up the mantle, and Japan is saying, if we look at what's been happening in America, it seems to be working, so therefore we need to do it also. We mustn't forget China. China has also been doing its own kind of quantitative easing, but China is a closed economy, so we don't really know what's going on inside China, but we know that some kind of easing is going on with regards to the restrictions that banks have to lending money. So China is doing something. So we have China, we have Japan, and we also have America doing it. And of course, you know, the Eurozone is the second biggest economic zone in the world. So therefore, the Eurozone needs to do something also if we are going to be getting some of this economic growth being spurred by all the regions, not just one. I mean, people have been relying too much on America doing all the heavy lifting. Other people have to do some of it also themselves.
And one thing I want to ask is, these manufacturing countries, so we've got Japan, we've got China, even Germany now. You're talking about improving exports, but who are they going to export to now? Who's going to buy all of these products?
Right, you know, that's the $64,000 question. The first one is, who is going to be able to export the most? And the country that and the country that's going to be able to export the most is the one with the cheapest currency. So what we're actually seeing now is this race to the bottom to see who can get their domestic currency to the bottom fastest. And of course, Japan seems to be winning the race right now, because the Japanese yen is low against the US dollar and is also low against other currencies. So other central banks are going to have to do exactly the same thing. Now, the other thing is, if consumers feel confident, they are going to start buying stuff. And at the moment, I think the growth engine is really China and also America. These are the two growth engines right now. And of course, you know, their consumers are going to be doing a lot of buying, or at least I hope they're going to be doing a lot of buying, particularly from Japan and maybe even from the Eurozone. So everybody's got to work together. Everybody's got to pull at the same time. And if they do, then we'll get out of this mess. But if anybody's just going to sit on their hands and do nothing, then of course, you know, some countries are going to have to do a lot more than others in order to try and spur economic growth. 2 or 3% economic growth is not going to be enough. We're going to need a lot more than that.
OK, David Kuo, thank you so much. We really appreciate your thoughts. The UK's attempt to reject the EU bankers' bonus cap has been dropped because Chancellor George Osborne said it was now unlikely to succeed. Now, the cap is designed to put an end to the reckless behaviour that caused the financial crash of 2008. And RT's London correspondent, Laura Smith, she's got the update on this ongoing conflict and this new development. Laura, what is the latest on this one, then?
Well, we understand that George Osborne, the Chancellor here in the UK, has pulled his challenge on the EU cap on bonuses. Essentially, we got this ruling from somebody in the European Court of Justice. It wasn't the final ruling, but it was a strong indication that the challenge would be rejected. And so George Osborne has said that in order to save taxpayers' money, he's not going to go forward with the challenge. So where does that leave them now? Well, Osborne says that he's going to try and ensure a system of remuneration that, quote, encourages responsibility rather than undermining it. And we have heard that what some banks are doing is, in fact, raising bankers' salaries, sometimes retrospectively, in order to be able to pay them more money and therefore give them more bonuses. So 100% of their salary, or 200% with shareholder approval, is what the cap is. The sort of arguments for the cap in the EU's minds is to stop bankers from taking excessive risks, which of course is seen as a big cause of the financial crisis. Osborne argues, and Cameron argues, that that's going to drive top bankers away from the city and ultimately possibly drive financial services firms out of the EU and to other locations like Asia, because it stops London from being competitive.
Laura, thank you so much indeed for the update. We're going to be following this one right through, and all of the tensions between the UK and the EU, which seem to be ongoing. corporate news time then. Sberbank will be the first Russian bank to start issuing credit guarantees denominated in Chinese yuan. Now, these kind of IOU credit notes will be used by Russia's largest lender to make payments for import contracts in yuan an easier process. Babevsky is planning to cut production due to the high cost of nuts, sugar and cocoa beans. The Russian chocolate giant imports 40% of its basic ingredients, and both cocoa and hazelnuts alone, well, they've jumped over a quarter each due to the Ebola crisis, the Russian food ban, a poor harvest in Turkey this year, and a weaker ruble. Moving on, burger lovers. Well, the 3 months is up. McDonald's is back open in Russia. It was shut down after the Russian health officials cited administrative violations, alluding to poor hygiene in the outlets. OK, let's join Mr. Tim Kirby on the business desk. Mr. Postman, we should have had you dress up this week. So it was Mel.ru, wasn't it? How did you get on?
Yeah, we actually very well. They went up 4%, which earned me over $800. Oh, it's a good feeling. Finally, the blessings of the wheel continue. Finally. Now, the question is why? I think it's because we got very lucky timing-wise, because they sold the website hh.ru for a lot of money. HH stands for Headhunter because it's a job where people can look for employees and employees can look for employers. And under mail.ru's care, that site went from 4 million active users to 14 million active users, and they got out of it, sold it,
brilliant
ripened
timing.
it like fruit.
Yeah.
So
that is awesome. Well done. I always think headhunting's a weird name, isn't it? Because it kind of sounds like you're going around searching for heads.
I think that's one of those things where I've never understood why people want to say something like that in English. But for foreign people, they're just like, it is cool American word. It okay. It's good. I think that's probably the logic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, one thing about Russian businesses, they love to take anything from English they can, even if it doesn't make sense.
Like
we have Acron, which makes fertilizer, the potash fertilizer, I believe it's called. That's a very interesting resource that's dug up from the ground, and we'll see if that has a lot of value next week.
Absolutely. Something a little bit different, which is really good. Fertilizer. Not exciting, but worth a lot of money. All right, Tim Kirby, congratulations. You've made a lot of money.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week and see if you can do the same.
All right, see you next week, Katie.
Tim, well, he's certainly got a good head to be hunted, hasn't he? Tim Kirby, well done. Next week, we'll find out how the OPEC meeting in Vienna goes to find out if Saudi Arabia will agree to cut their production to boost the price of oil. In the meantime, I will be on Twitter. You can join me then. Goodbye.